Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in today. I am going to be covering this book, Leave Only Footprints, by Connor Knighton. This is, like the Tangleroot Palace, a review about a book I bought new, which doesn't happen often, but does occasionally happen. This book is specifically about a reporter named Connor Knighton who, coming off the back of a broken off engagement, pitched to CBS Sunday Morning an idea for a program. Back in 2017, Connor Knighton went from national park to national park to present a program called On the Trail with CBS Sunday Morning. When I saw this on the bookshelves at Carlsbad Caverns National Park, I fell in love with it for two reasons. Well, actually three reasons. The first reason is that Leave Only Footprints is the second half of a slogan often repeated by the outdoors program Leave No Trace. The slogan is take only pictures, leave only footprints. And that mentality has helped out the national parks and public land in general, being really easy for the public to know and remember and to consider when going out into the wilderness. The second reason is that as a child growing up, my grandma would always leave CBS Sunday Morning, the news program, on the TV before church, and I have a lot of fond memories surrounding that program. Thirdly, the National Park Service is, as an outdoor recreation professional, something I live for. I provide opportunities for airmen to go on recreational trips throughout, really, the Four Corners region, the U.S. Southwest. And having Carlsbad Caverns National Park nearby, White Sands National Park, Grand Canyon, Saguaro, Great Sand Dunes, Mesa Verde, Guadalupe Mountains National Park, Big Bend, you have all of these different amazing national parks available for people. It is land set aside for people to enjoy, and that is something I live for. And to have a book describing that and having them describe and share stories from each park touched me. I saw this on the shelf and I knew I had to have it. When Connor Knighton was going around doing this project, it was airing in 2017, the 100th anniversary of the National Park System. And during that year, a very busy year, he traveled all over the United States of America to go to every single national park to find some story that can be shared with the public while there. So the program really emphasizes how much Connor is doing through this time, and you can actually find on YouTube a playlist by CBS Sunday Morning titled On the Trail, and it has 24 videos about those national parks. This book was published in 2020, and the copy I have here is the 2021 Crown Trade paperback edition. The dedication states, "For my parents, who gave me the compass I've always used to find my path." He specifically goes to national parks, not to national monuments or any other designation within the National Park Service, but one of the pages shows a map of the United States of America with every national park on it, and it's right here. The national parks are separated into thematic chapters. So for the first one, Sunrise has Acadia National Park. Water has Hot Springs and Biscayne. The Animals chapter has Everglades, Channel Islands, Pinnacles, and Death Valley. God has Yosemite, Capitol Reef, and Lake Clark. Sound has Great Sand Dunes and Katmai. Trees has Joshua Tree, Sequoia, Kings Canyon, and Redwood. Mystery has Crater Lake and Congaree. Borders has Big Bend and American Samoa. Volcanoes has Lassen Volcanic, Hawaii Volcanoes, and Haleakala. Ice has Glacier Bay, Glacier, Kenai Fjords, and Wrangell St. Elias. People has Arches, Bryce Canyon, and Zion. Home has Mesa Verde and Great Smoky Mountains. Canyons has Grand Canyon, Black Canyon of the Gunnison. Forgiveness has Dry Tortugas and Petrified Forest. Caves has Wind Cave, Carlsbad Caverns, and Mammoth Cave. Light has Great Basin and Saguaro. Travelers has Theodore Roosevelt, Voyagers, and Denali. Love has Canyonlands and North Cascades. Food has Gates of the Arctic, Kobuk Valley, and Cuyahoga Valley. Mountains has Guadalupe Mountains and Rocky Mountain. Diversity has Mount Rainier and Shenandoah. Disconnecting has Isle Royale, Olympic, Virgin Islands. Sunset has Grand Teton and Yellowstone. The epilogue has Gateway Arch, Indiana Dunes, White Sands, and New River Gorge. And the prologue has the Badlands. Those are all the national parks covered, and in each of these chapters, Connor digs deep to find ways to connect these to those themes. A couple that I can recall just off the top of my head are sound. In Great Sand Dunes, he talks about how everything is so quiet there. You can hear people half a mile away very distinctly. You can hear words in their conversations when they're half a mile away. It's quiet there, and sound travels so much further. For mystery, he talks about Crater Lake. Specifically, in Crater Lake, there is a feature called the Old Man, which is a tree that floats instead of sideways so that the length of it is on the water. The Old Man floats vertically so that only the stump is visible, and it floats. It follows the currents of the water. Where the wind takes it, it goes. It doesn't drift onto the beach at all. It floats, and it has floated there for hundreds of years, really. It grows moss, it grows spider webs on it. It is a very unique feature. The section on ice, specifically Glacier National Park, located in northern Idaho, comes with some pictures showing off the amount of ice that has disappeared from that park. Specifically, it shows two pictures, one taken in 1938 and one taken the day they visited. In the one from 1938, you see a large glacier sitting on top of a lake with ice in the shade of a mountain on the opposite side of the lake. In the picture taken in 2017, that glacier that was resting on the water is almost entirely gone. There's only a few small pockets of ice left on that lake. On the opposite side of the lake, where that snow was hiding in the eaves of the mountain, there is still a glacier. The pictures come with a caption, "By 2030, Glacier National Park is predicted to have no glaciers left." I hiked with geologist Dan Fager to view the remnants of the park's once legendary Grinnell Glacier. As much as this book is a love story to the National Park Service, it is also a warning to people of the features that are disappearing and the way these things are changing. I've never been to Glacier National Park, but I've been to Carlsbad many times. I've been to White Sands National Park, newly designated. I've been to so many across this country, and there are always changes to it. When I went to Carlsbad Caverns as a child almost 20 years ago, I recall seeing a feature that is titled Mirror Lake. And now, when I go back there, nearly 30 years old, to see that feature with the airmen that sign up for my trips, they see a blurred image because Mirror Lake today is not what it used to be. There's not as much water in Carlsbad Caverns as there used to be. And so the pond that created Mirror Lake is lower. And because it's lower, it doesn't reflect the full image as well as it should. And that's across the entire cave. This 20-30 year drought that's been affecting the Southwest affects the cave and so many other parts of the region. And that, in a way, is partially what he's emphasizing in this story, but he also expresses hope in some ways. In Alaska, he visits Alaskan natives that are living in close proximity to national parks, still live pretty closely to their ancestors whilst having some noteworthy differences. They have electricity, they have all these different amenities of modern living, but they're so isolated and removed that they still hunt caribou, they still go out for berry picking and other gathering of food for themselves, because the cost of like a frozen pizza out there is astronomically high due to the costs of getting it out there. And when he talks about the chapter Home, he talks about how in Great Smoky Mountains, in creating lakes and dams for certain parks around the country and expanding national parks, they consume land that people lived on. And what is discussed in the Great Smoky Mountains chapter is specifically a community of people whose cemeteries are still out on national park land and who are permitted 1 or 2 days a year to really go out there and take that ferry to get back to where their grandparents lived. Some of them who are still alive today can remember having lived there before being evacuated for that dam. And there is some degree of irony. You know, he does mention that the Cherokee lived on that land before those people did. But it is important to note that a lot of these national parks were once lived on by other people. What Connor Knighton kind of experiences in his short visits to each of these national parks is what I've been told is the 90-10 rule, which isn't necessarily a rule so much as it is a mentality in park design. And the 90-10 rule, or 90-10 principle, is simple. 90% of the guests that visit a national park should be able to see 10% of the national park, the key features. 10% of the guests should have 90% of the park open to them, which is to say that the main features are going to have paved walkways to them. They're going to have tours to visit those sections. And then for those other people, the national park has a lot of backcountry that is really only accessible to people who have the skills and the fitness to get out there and thrive. And in a way, he flaunts that 10% rule of visiting all these parks. He doesn't have enough time to really go into the backcountry and find those hidden gems within each park. But merely showing off these national parks sells them to a wider audience who may never have heard of some of these national parks and now can only dream of going. In some of them, he does go into the backcountry and really explore things in ways that aren't necessarily available to those 90% of the guests. And in doing so, he advertises and sells the idea of the national parks even more. These portions of the national parks that most visitors won't get to see. And he's shedding light on it. And he sheds light on some political issues as well. In Big Bend National Park, he discusses how there's a border town on the opposite side of the Rio Grande that suffered for a decade and a half because of stricter border policy. Because of stricter border policy. It is a 2-hour drive from the nearest grocery store, but a lot of its influx of money came from guests to Big Bend National Park taking a ferry across the river and visiting that Mexican town and trying to absorb some of that culture. In a way, that Mexican town was a feature of Big Bend National Park. And when the border security tightened, people weren't able to visit it from the national park. And he discusses how it was work put in by the people at Big Bend National Park to allow for their guests to be able to cross into Mexico to visit that town, and how that town had a bit of a bump that money was flowing into it again because guests were able to go there. And so there's all these different ways that the political and social and environmental atmospheres affect the national parks, and he takes this time to explore it and to explore the relationships with the people that he goes to these national parks with. He takes time to explore his own life and his own thoughts in these national parks. It's a busy schedule he has to go to all of these geographically distant national parks, but he finds ways to enjoy it and to make challenge enjoyable to the reader. I don't know that I'll ever go to every national park, but I know there are some national parks I want to go to that I haven't yet. And there are some ways that I will get to experience the national park that most people don't get to. And that's part of why I love my job, and it's part of why I love the National Park Service and the National Park System, because it saves and sets aside these beautiful areas in the United States of America to be enjoyed by people the world over. I've only shared a few stories from this book, but there are so many others. It's 300 pages long, and I've covered maybe 30 or 40 pages tops, and only then skimming it. And I think if you like the National Park Service, you're going to want to read this. If you like travel logs or long-form essays, this is a good book for you. It cost me $17, but it was $17 well spent. In the description of this video, I'm going to include the playlist from CBS Sunday Morning titled On the Trail, so that you can watch some of these stories as well, and perhaps it'll enlighten you in some way. I love this book, and I love the National Park Service, and I love what this book does for the public and the National Park Service, and I think it is definitely worth a read and a buy. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to this book review.